Okay, welcome everyone to our December Sacramento Storytellers Guild. And really nice for everyone to come out. There's lots and lots of activities around this time of year, so we're really glad that you took time. Let everyone know that this is being recorded, so all of you tellers and poets make that you understand you're going to be recorded. The theme this month is presents. So all of you poets and tellers will be offering presents to we listeners. And we listeners are offering our presents to you as listeners and hearing your stories. And to top it off, it is also winter solstice. So that's a bonus for you druids out there. So our first teller is Sir Lawrence. As most of you know, Sir Lawrence has been around Sacramento storytelling forever. He is blind, and that's why he's not able to be here. And every time I talk to Lawrence, I always learn something because he loves to tell you stuff. I learned recently that City College of Los Angeles is now UCLA. That's where his mother went to college. Oh. And his dad went to college at University of Minnesota, which is my alma mater. I also learned that Larry, his last name has not always been Crayson, that he used to be Cragen. His wife was Johnson. And when they got married, they combined the two of them into Crayson. And that is how Sir Lawrence became Lawrence Crayson. And without further ado, I'm going to let Sir Lawrence do his thing.
Go ahead, Larry.
Good afternoon. Years and years ago, I was invited with some friends to my very first Kwanzaa celebration. It was the 6th day of Kwanzaa, and they celebrate on the 6th day a wonderful event called creativity. And so I was looking forward to coming to this house. It was owned by a professor at Sac State, an African-American man who had traveled to Africa with the Peace Corps and was very concerned about children's welfare and so on. So his family and the neighborhood around it were celebrating this wonderful day. My friends and I approached the house and we saw some signs along the driveway. There were 6 signs in a row, all in different languages. The last sign up at the top was in English, and it said, "Welcome." When I got to the door, I saw a rock on the side of on the porch, and it had some writing on it. So I was kind of curious, and I went over and said, "Help, help, turn me over." And so I did, and I laughed out loud and said on the other side, "Thank you, that felt so much better." I went up to the door expecting to find the doorbell, and I found a wire that said, "Pull me." So I pulled, and I heard some bells inside the house. And I said to myself, "Goodness, that's really a doorbell." When a lady came to the door, it was the wife of the owner, and she greeted me with a beautiful African dress on, and she smiled and welcomed me in and my friends. And we noticed that to the left, there was a pile of shoes and on the shelving. So we took the shoes off and walked into the living quarters. I noticed to my far right that there was a floor to ceiling 6 lines of African bells. That was the doorbell that I heard. It was a wonderful sight. Off to my left, there was a couch with a homemade blanket with beautiful earthy colors, brown, blue, green, and gold. reminded us that we have to take care of our earth. To the right also, I saw a beautiful table decorated with Kwanzaa decorations. And right in the middle was 7 candles on a wooden holder. The middle candle was a big black candle, and the 3 on the right was red, and the 3 on the left were blue, green. The black candle symbolized the beauty and the love of the African American skin, black. The red candles were symbolic of the suffering and the consequences of our ancestors who made the path to our life. The green were hope and prosperity that we hope to accomplish in our lifetime. It was a wonderful symbol of unity and love. They were not lit, but the father of the house went and lit the 6th candle. That was the day that we were celebrating. The children had arranged a dance that they had arranged to celebrate a story of African descent. Since many of them came from different countries, or at least they thought they did, their dresses were of each country that they represented. Flowing dresses, and 4 Congo drums were beaten in each corner of the house. It was a wonderful sight of the flowing dancing and the drumming, and everybody celebrated. Then they came back into the living quarters, and a young girl, the youngest daughter of the house, stood up and said, "I'm the one who chose the dessert that I made for everybody to partake in. It's a dessert from the Congo area, and it was a very beautiful sweet pastry with mango fruit in it." We had that later after we had the Lebanese lentil soup that had lamb and mint and chickpeas. It was a tomato base, and it was so nice and warm on a nice cold day like it was. It was a wonderful festive day, and also the highlight to me was that they celebrated the oldest member of the family there, who was 85 years old, and she was a graduate of the first African American all-girls, all-women's college in Atlanta, Georgia, which still serves today. It was formed right after the Civil War. But she was the oldest family member who actually graduated from college. Later on, we had a painting that was done of her, and also I looked around and there were many drawings and sketches of landscape from Africa. It was so overwhelming to me that the wife came up to me and touched me on my shoulder and said, "It is overwhelming, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes, it's hard to take in, but I love the love here, and I really appreciate you sharing your house, and I really will always remember Kwanzaa in the 6th day of creation." Thank you.
Oh. Woo! Yeah.
Thank you for your present, Sir Lawrence, and
Yes,
thank you for sharing what was obviously a present to you.
thank you.
Our next teller is Susie Capone, and she will be appearing by Zoom from Maine. I think she's actually at work today, maybe, I'm not sure. I've heard Susie tell twice, and both times she's told the story from the child's perspective. And she has done the best job of any storyteller I've ever heard, telling a story from a child's perspective. I have no idea what story she's telling today, but I hope it's from a child's perspective. It may not be. Susie lives in Maine, where I live in the summer, in Bangor, which in the 1800s was the lumber capital of the world. She is a social worker, She owns 17 vintage sewing machines and a house named Gladys. Susie, take it away.
Can everyone hear?
Not very well. Can you go-
I'm going to put you up as loud as I can. Is
There you go. That's good.
that better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Just poking at you a little bit. Well, today's story, I think it's going to fit right into that beautiful introduction. It is called Christmas 1929. And I wasn't there, so it's hearsay, but I have a feeling that it's a very true representation. And the story starts with Georgie running out of the school, running to his mother and his two little brothers who were waiting for him to be dismissed, to tell them that he had learned something very important that day. His teacher had had them all sit down in a circle, and he had read them a story and given them all a candy cane because it was December 24th and school was dismissing half day for the Christmas holiday. Georgie was very, very concerned because the night before Christmas had explained that the Santa Claus needs a chimney. He comes down the chimney. Well, Georgie didn't have a chimney. Now, he had had a chimney for the first 5 Christmases of his life, but he didn't have one this time because they had moved. They had moved from the city they'd moved from the country, rural Virginia, to the city where their daddy had taken a job in a big brass factory. And as a result, they lived in something called a high rise. Now, a high rise at that time was 6 floors. 5 of the floors were apartments. And the first floor was stores. Now, to Georgie, who had grown up in a little white house on his grandfather's property with chickens and a vegetable garden, this was paradise. He had moved to a place where he had his own staircase and he could play with other children in the hallways, and they could look out of the windows and see smokestacks and the tops of cars going by. It was miraculous. And if they wanted something, they wanted eggs or milk or vegetables, they just went downstairs with a nickel to one of those stores. And a man named Patsy would put exactly what was needed into a bag, and he could carry it right back up to Mama without being pecked on the toes by those evil chickens or without having to read the rows of vegetables that never ended. Well, the only problem was there was no chimney. There was a stove that ran on gas, and it had a little pipe about that big. There was no way that Santa Claus could get down that pipe and bring a bag of toys. So Georgie told his mama, this is a terrible thing. There's not going to be any Christmas at our house. And Mama said, now, Georgie, you are such a good boy, and Santa always comes to good boys and girls. Aren't you my best helper? Don't you dry the dishes? Don't you look after your brothers? Don't you run downstairs and get me eggs? You will not be forgotten on Christmas. Well, Georgie knew that Mama meant every word she said, but grown-ups often didn't understand these things. You need a chimney. But even with this problem, in 1929, little boys didn't talk back. So he took his brother John Earl's hand and he walked home with Mama and didn't say anything else about it. Now, being Christmas Eve, Daddy came home early, and he came home with a tree over his shoulder. And the boys helped Daddy put the tree in a tin bucket. They put the stump of the tree in the tin bucket, and they put bricks all around it so it would stand even. And then they poured in water so the tree could drink. And then Daddy showed them how to cut paper, newspaper, into long strips and paste the ends together with flour and water. And if you put one loop inside of another loop, it made a chain. They made a chain that stretched all the way across the living room, and they wrapped it around the tree. And then Mama made popcorn, and they took pieces of wire and they threaded the popcorn onto the wire and bent it into loops that could be hung on the tree branches for decoration. Well, Mama said that she was going to go start the baking, and the boys could lay out their stockings. Now, there was no mantelpiece, so they laid out their stockings on the living room table. They laid them smooth and flat so the Santa Claus could fill them up. Although Georgie still wasn't sold on the fact that Santa Claus was going to get through that little stovepipe. But he did as Mama and Daddy said, laid out his stocking. The tree looked beautiful. Now, the Santa Claus always brought a string of lights to light up the tree, but they had it all decorated for him. And Mama said it was time for the boys to go to bed. Georgie whispered one more time, "Do you think he can get here?" Well, Mama patted him on the back and said, "Don't worry." And then she did something she didn't usually do. She started making a pot of coffee at night. And when she noticed Georgie looking at her, she just said, "It's Christmas Eve. I want a little treat. I think I want to taste some coffee." Well, Georgie decided he was going to sit up in bed and wait for the Santa Claus because he wanted to know how he was going to get in. But the next thing he knew, he was waking up and it was dark outside. But if it was dark and it had been Christmas Eve, it was Christmas Day. And Georgie jumped out of bed with the cold linoleum on his feet. He didn't bother to put on a house coat. He just ran straight to the living room and he checked the clock. Well, the little hand was close to the 3, so that must mean it was morning. And he ran to the living room to see a dark tree with chains and popcorn loops on it. And he felt the table and the stockings were flat. Well, you could have heard the wail all the way back to Virginia. Georgie ran into his parents' room. He shook his father. He said, Daddy couldn't find us. I knew he wouldn't find us. That stovepipe is too small. And Daddy rolled over and said, Son, go on back to sleep. He'll come. And Georgie said, No, it's too late. It's already Christmas. He missed us. Well, Papa wanted his sleep. He got up 6 days a week, quite early. And the 7th day, he got up to go to church. There weren't a lot of holidays in 1929. Christmas was one of his few days to truly sleep in and get a refreshing rest. So he suggested, Georgie, why don't you go in the kitchen? I know Mama was baking and she made those molasses cookies that we always have for Christmas breakfast. Go on in and get a cookie. You can have one before anybody else, and then go back to bed. And in the morning, when it's light, you'll see the Santa Claus got here. Well, in 1929, little boys didn't talk back. So he headed into the kitchen, head down, feet shuffling. Daddy didn't understand, but he wasn't going to turn down the cookie. So into the kitchen he went. But instead of the kitchen being empty, there was Mama sitting at the table. She had her mending basket in front of her, the coffee pot, and an oil lamp, giving just a small amount of light. Georgie could see the cookie platter and the fresh baked loaves of bread, and the spicy smell was in the air of ginger and cinnamon and the tang of molasses. But Mama didn't look up. And Georgie said, Mama, Well, Mama jumped up just then like she was startled, and she ran to the window and threw it up and leaned out into the cold air. And she waved up and said, "Thank you, thank you. I'll see you next year. Merry Christmas." And then Mama reached down onto the fire escape and pulled a funny shaped bag with all kinds of things poking the sides. She put it down on a chair and then looked up and said, "Georgie, I didn't know you were awake. You'll never guess who was just here." And that was Christmas 1929. Thank you. And I do want you to know that story was given to me by my uncle, and Mama was my grandmother. The three boys were my uncles. And at that Christmas, she was 6 months along with my mother, Jenny, and her twin, Louise. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
again
for coming.
for your present, Susie. And what did I tell you guys?
Yeah.
Okay, our next speaker is Meghna Bhatt. And you all have programs, so you can read that. I'm not gonna, you know, double up on that, but Meghna is the powerhouse. I went to her website and she's on national boards for gender and social justice. She's done writing, filmmaking, storytelling. She's been published in many journals, including Ms. Magazine. And I'm not sure what she's going to talk about today, but I'm going to welcome Meghna Bhatt. Thank you.
Just making sure my timer works. Okay. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So my story goes back to when I was 5 years old. I was born and raised in the city of Mumbai, India. And I grew up with my parents. My mom is a high school math teacher, and my father, a self-employed businessman, and my paternal grandparents who lived with us. So it was a lot of fun in a one-bedroom apartment. And as a 5-year-old child who was diagnosed with hypothyroidism and was experiencing mental lethargy and developmental delay, I was a very isolated child. Like I really felt, I struggled with making friends in my kindergarten. I struggled being in community, in crowded spaces. But the one thing that got me excited was meeting my aunt and uncle and spending time with my cousins. I loved being in community. So whenever we had a dinner invitation, I would be so excited. Like I would count the days and I would not miss school. Like I would be like looking forward to that. So one day my aunt and uncle invited us for a dinner party. I was so excited. And that was my dad's sister and her husband. And I look forward to it because my aunt made this delicious food and I loved spending time with my cousins. We reached there, and like every dinner party, you can see the adults, laughing and talking and having the drinks and appetizers, sidebar conversations, and kids playing chaos, including myself, right? So at some point of time in the living room, all the adults are seated and they're talking, and my mom suddenly gets up and she looks very uncomfortable. She looks very sick. And I get worried about her. And she runs to the restroom. My dad follows her and gets her a glass of water. And I'm so worried. I'm like, oh my God, is my mom okay? Did she eat something? Did she, what's going on? And as a 5-year-old child with limited vocabulary and processing capacity, I mean, that's all I could think about. But I waited for my mom with bated breath. And as soon as she walked out with my dad, holding the glass of water, an uncle among the kind of a family friend, not a biological uncle. We call all uncles and aunties, everybody. So this uncle suddenly looks at my mom and says, "Congratulations, Naina." That's my mom's name. "Congratulations, Naina, on throwing up." So as a 5-year-old child, I am very confused. I'm angry. I like my jaws dropped. I am disgusted by the fact that this adult thought of congratulating my mom when she threw up. Like, how dare you? And I was shocked. I'm like, really? While I was processing that, and I did not know any cuss words then, and I struggle with that now too, but I'm pretty sure I was kind of, in a fairy tale language, But at some point of time, by the time I processed that, all the other adults started rejoicing. They're like, congratulations, Naina and Ramdas. And I'm like, what is going on? Don't these adults need to learn that they need to check in with my mom and see if she's okay? Do we need to call a doctor? Does she need any medicines? They are congratulating her. Did I miss a memo? What's going on? And the moment I processed that news, my mom and dad's response surprised me the most. They looked at everybody and smiled and said, thank you so much. So there I was again surprised. I was like, again, like, am I the only adult there who knows how to behave when someone is sick? Well, what I did not know, and some of you may have guessed, is my mom and dad were expecting their second child. And I'm pretty sure that here, at some point of time, my parents had made me sit down and told me I was going to be a bigger sister, big sister. There's going to be a baby at home. But again, as a 5-year-old child who's still slow in learning and figuring out things, I did not know what sense to make of it. Like, what would it look like, right? All I knew, people were saying, you're going to be a big sister. So at that point of time, I remember that my memory kind of blurred for the rest of the year. I just knew my mom was putting on weight because she had a baby in her belly. And at some point of time, after the winter holidays, the first week of Jan, I woke up in the morning and my dad and my grandmom were at home. My mom wasn't at home. And to my recollection, she wasn't at home that week. And I kept asking my grandmom, where's mom? And she'd be like, she's fine. She'll come home soon. Don't worry about it. And I was worried, but I was not a really curious child, which worked out for them. So I didn't ask like a zillion questions. But some point of time, that morning in January, my dad said, we're going to go and meet mom. Are you excited? I said, yes, I am. So he's like, be a good girl. Let's get dressed up. And I'll drop you to your kindergarten class after meeting mom. So we get excited. I get excited. I dress up as an obedient child. I hold my dad's hand and we go. And first stop is this building. Of course, all the men and women are wearing white, which means in hindsight, it was a doctor and the nurses. But I hold my dad's hand and quietly go. And in one room at the entryway or the doorway, I see my mom sitting at the cot. She looks beautiful. She is wearing her hair short. She's worn this red printed nightgown, and she's so excited to see me, and she wants to hug me. So I leave my dad's hand and I go running behind, running to her, and I'm hugging her, and I'm trying to get all the warmth and the cuddles and all the love that I missed. And while that happens, I kind of peer on the left side of my mom while hugging her, and I see this kind of like this bundle wrapped up in a towel or something, right? And I was like, what the heck is that? At some point of time, my parents see me being curious and they take me to the cot, and I see this bauble, or I don't even know what it was called, but I see this new baby swaddled in this red printed bed sheet or blanket. And they're like, Meghna, you're a big sister. That's your younger sister. It's a baby sister. It's a girl. Again, a 5-year-old child, I'm like struggling. Like, what is that supposed to mean? But guess what? I did not have the words to express how elated I was being a big sister, seeing this tiny bundle of joy. Her hair was covered with thick black hair, and she had closed her eyes, of course. But I wanted to see her tiny toes and her tiny feet, and I was not able to do that because she was completely swaddled. At that time, a nurse passed by and told my parents, congratulations, you are having a Christmas baby. You had a Christmas baby. And I looked at my parents and they're like, yeah, your sister was born on 25th December, early in the morning. And I was excited. I was like, I felt I was going to love her the most. Like, I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna be the best big sister I could ever be, not leave her side and, irritate her. That, like, those are my rights. That's like my birthright. Um, what my parents did not know, that they dropped me off to kindergarten school. My dad dropped me off, and any other day I would have, probably my mom would drop me at kindergarten school, which is a part of the same school building she taught maths, right? And she would leave. And but because of separation anxiety, this kindergarten kid would scream bloody murder every day. I would cry every day. And until a classmate would come and give me her breakfast, and I would keep quiet and be happy. So, a side note, I get bribed by delicious food. But back to that moment when my mom and my dad dropped me off, they did not know that they were raising a walkie-talkie little BBC going on, like a broadcasting company. I was so excited. Usually, the child who barely spoke and who only cried until food was offered to her, when I went excitedly going to every student, every classmate, every teacher, and I yelled, I am a big sister. I have a baby sister who's at home. And they were surprised to hear my voice. They were like, oh, Meghna has a voice? She doesn't only cry. Well, my parents named her Sneha, which means love and affection. And as time went by, Christmas became really special. We had a plastic scrawny Christmas tree with ornaments, and we had snow, but cotton balls, because we had not seen snow at that time. So we made the most out of what we had. For us, Christmas was not just, it wasn't a religious thing. For us, it was about being in community, about holding gratitude, and about being especially thankful for having my sister join our family. And we are totally two different individuals, but we are amazing travel partners. She's still in India, and I try to spend her birthday as much as I can by visiting India in December. Not this year though. But I kind of miss her, right? I'm excited. And I'm so proud of her, of who she's become. And I'll tell you one last thing is, even though she's 5.5 years younger than me, oh my God, she is more street smart. She has taught me much more than what books would teach me, what my parents would teach me. She's told me to hold boundaries. She's told me to advocate for myself. And she's like, it's like basically she knows what she is capable of, and she brings out the best in me. She wants me to be a better human being. So this story today is a gift for her from far away. I'd love to embarrass her. So the story is for her. Happy birthday, Sneha, and thank you again.
Well done. Oh my God.
That was wonderful. Thank you for your gift. And yeah, we had a grandson born on Christmas Eve 4 years ago. And of course, I'm sure he also said he was going to be a really nice big brother, but it doesn't always work out quite like that all the time. But in fact, he told his mom last week, she said, Mom, when I'm 10 years old, I'll be really nice to my brother. So he's got 6 years to go. All right. Our next teller is another powerhouse. So she sent me this bio, and it said she was an international storyteller. So I thought, okay, she's got to have a website, right? So I went and looked at Janice's website, and I'm just going to read you part of her website. Janice Bird. Janice is an international inspirational keynote speaker. Her mission in life is to encourage, provide insight, and uplift others, all the while continuing to work on her own personal growth. She was awarded the Catalyst of Courage Award by the Los Angeles Tribune and was listed as a global woman to watch in the Washington, D.C. Chronicle. Being raised in Mexico City, as well as being bilingual, gives her a multi-dimensional appeal. Let's welcome Janice Bird.
So, fun fact, I am an inspirational speaker who is terrified to speak. I struggle with a lot of fear, but my purpose is higher and bigger and deeper. And so I force myself to stand up here and shake and do it with fear, but stand up and just express my voice and hopefully encourage others to do the same. And you were brilliant and hilarious. So that was so good. And this story is for my grandma. Clank, 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 clank. What in the world could be in here? My dad had just handed me this little tin box for Christmas. And knowing my dad's financial situation, I just assume it's going to be like some trinket from the dollar store. So I flippantly pop open the lid and I look down inside. And then I look back up at my dad, my eyes as big as saucers. And he just smiles at me and says, "Merry Christmas. Those belonged to your grandma." What he's referring to are these 3 diamond rings that are laying all haphazardly, all willy-nilly in the bottom of this tin. And I just instantly start to cry. I'm crying for 2 reasons. The first is that my grandma was one of my favorite human beings in the entire universe. Here she comes, Miss America. She would sing every time I walked into the room.
Wow.
Yes, my earliest memory of this is when I'm about 5 years old and I had slipped on some of her high-heeled shoes and I am dancing and I am prancing around the living room to Here She Comes, Miss America. And with that simple song, I felt beautiful. I felt special. I felt seen and I felt loved. I didn't have very many years with my grandma, unfortunately. She died when I was just 16 years old of ovarian cancer. And now here I stand on Christmas Day, 25 years later, looking down at these beautiful diamond rings that I could still vividly picture on her fingers every time she elegantly lifted up her cigarette to her lips. My hands are shaking as I slide one of the rings out of the tin and onto my finger. And I start crying a little bit harder when I realize that this ring fits me perfectly.
Wow.
Almost as if my grandma wanted me to have her rings. The second reason why I'm crying is because my dad had held onto these rings for over 2 decades without telling anybody that he had them. And given some questionable choices that my dad had made throughout his life, he didn't have much to his name. As a matter of fact, I saw him going from living in a nice house to living in a low-income senior center. I saw him go from driving a car to using and taking public transportation. And I saw him go from having a beautiful set of white teeth to having none at all. This man, my father, could have made another very questionable decision and taken those rings to a pawn shop to get money to buy things for himself. But he didn't. He chose to hold on to them and give them to me, his only daughter, Miss America. Now, time has gone by, as time tends to do, and I have 2 grown children of my own. And my hope, my goal, is that every time my kids walk into the room, that they feel the exact same way that my grandma made me feel. Beautiful, special, seen, and absolutely loved. Thank you.
Wow. Wow.
Thank you very much we've got some killer new tellers. Thanks a lot for your present. So I screwed up. I had Vicky Carroll in second spot. And then when I typed up my notes, I have all her stuff written here, but when I typed them up, I skipped over. So Vicky is our first poet to tell today. And again, I apologize, Vicky. Vicky has been published in poetry has been published in several publications. She's involved in several programs right here at the Sacramento Storytellers or Sacramento
Poetry Center.
Poetry Center. And she also has begun to branch out into storytelling, but today she will be talking about doing her poetry. And you should also thank her for, she is the one that coordinates all of our treats every year. Multi-talented person, storyteller and organizer, Vicky Carroll. And I'm gonna take a look at it after Vicky.
I have a little Christmas. I have a Christmas child too, and her last name is Carol. And she was born on Christmas Eve, and her cousin was born on Christmas Day. So the grandfather calls them his Christmas carols. And all his kids were adopted, so just so lucky that he has that little thing, the Christmas carols. So hi everyone.
Hey.
Okay, I'm gonna start off with a poem called Sparkles. The only time I window shop is when I walk up to a jeweler's display. The diamonds are so dazzling, they twinkle. One diamond, depending on the cut, can have many twinkles. It is something to gaze upon. The diamonds, gold and silvers shine and glisten. The foundation of many jewel creations. Rubies, emeralds, sapphires bring forth clarity of color to add depth to a piece. Let's not forget the pearl. Its opalescence seems to glow, refine as the body's warmth brings it to light. All are beautiful to look at, a wonder of nature and artistry. As for me, it's best to visit, refresh my memory of this brilliance. I prefer the less is more attitude. I don't want to worry about them. Kind of brilliant. Okay, love is a gift. It does not have an expiration date. Love sees everything, past, present, and future, without judgment. Love waits and smiles with every breath. See yourself in love with me. I see myself in love with you. It feels full, enough to share. Gives and gives, never tires. Love looks forward to our next adventure. What I see is the speed of your smile, the half chuckle that follows. A light in your eyes leads me down the path in search of the sweetness in life. What does my heart say? I listen quietly. My first crush in the lofty places where ideas dance. I leave my ballet class and walk home. My record player calls me. I answer with the Beatles. I am in third grade. For my great report card, I got a new Beatles record. After the work of school and the play of dance, I was ready to listen to the music. I turned on my record player, put on my new record. I still remember the feelings I had as I listened. The night they were on TV, I was not allowed to see them. I asked from bed, "What are the Beatles?" My parents told me to go to sleep. Of course I didn't. I heard girls screaming. Well, that was it. The next day at school, every girl was talking about the Beatles. Oh, was I mad when I got home. I told my mom, everyone knows the Beatles except me. Mom, that is not nice to let me not know. Well, luckily, the Beatles came on TV again quite soon, and I finally saw what the Beatles were. Paul wants to hold my hand. Yeah, yeah. Okay, number one, I don't have drums, so I'm going to use this. And by the way, this was made by Angela, and she was a great poet and storyteller.
Definitely.
And I just put some beans in there and put some paper on it. So pretend like this is a drum.
Angela Jane?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cherokee spirit. Drums are beating. Boom, 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 boom. Fires crackle. Boom, 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 boom. We gather our people. They sing our songs. Dance to the music. Dance to the drums. Boom, 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 boom. Counting the lives of our people. The people say, "Thank you, universe, for our beginning, our changes through history. We are still here. We will always be in the hearts and minds of our ancestors." Ga li ga. I am thankful. I found a lost key. It strikes my curiosity. May I be blessed with an understanding of my journey. Boom, 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 boom. And so it is. My last one. Chicken and dumplings. 5 generations of Southern ladies surrounded the pot. The eldest was whispering to the group as they leaned forward to hear every word. "I think we can remove the dumplings ever so gently. Place them on this tray, cover, and put in the oven while I thicken the gravy. We need to be quick. Put the dumplings back in the soup, lid on, bring to a boil. Minutes are all we need. Hopefully it will be perfect. No one will know. Except us, of course." The 5 giggles went to work. Thank you, dear.
Well, thank you for not only Christmas gifts, but Christmas carols as well. Okay, we're gonna take a short break, let's say 10 minutes, and somehow I have all the women at the front of the program, and all the men at the end, so what the guys have next. So 10 minutes, you got through. All right.
Thank you. That might be Vicky's phone in the chair next to you.
Vicky,
Thank you.
what's your phone?
Thank you.
Very wrong.
All right. We're back. And like I said, I don't know how I ended up having all the women in the beginning and all the men at the end, but that's how it's worked out. So our next teller is Manuel Camacho. Manuel is an author, and he is has a collection of short stories as well as a collection of poetry. He talks about, I think I'm on the wrong, here we are, there's the page I'm looking for. And he's written of his experiences as an undocumented immigrant, He teaches at Delta College in Stockton, and he recently moved to Sacramento. And let's now welcome Monreal.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Here we go. The great Aristotle, one night, while observing a lunar eclipse, he discovered that the earth was round. The great Copernicus discovered that the earth revolves around the sun and not the other way around. The great Isaac Newton discovered gravity when an apple fell down from the tree. The great Galileo perfected the telescope, and then he discovered 2 moons in Jupiter. But only one man was able to transcend the universe. Only one man was able to transcend time and space. Only one man was able to see everything. Albert Einstein. But let me tell you what happened to Albert Einstein one Christmas day. See, when he was a professor at Princeton University, he used to walk every afternoon, and he took the same path. And he walked through the campus until he got to this bench. And there he sat. And he looked at his watch. It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Every day he did that. He got to that same bench and sat there and looked at his watch. 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Sharp. He was German, no? Now, one Christmas day, he got to that bench. He sat there, looked at his watch, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And suddenly, he heard a voice behind him. Hello, Albert. Oh. He was taken aback because he was famous. His students call him Professor Einstein, Dr. Einstein. His family call him Al, but nobody ever called him Albert. He was kind of strange. So he turned around, and there was this man. And he said, your time is up, Albert. We gotta go. What? We gotta go? Where? Who are you? He said, I'm Iblis, the angel of death. What? I'm meditating over here. Can you please leave me alone? That's very funny, Albert. It's time. We gotta go. You know what? I think you're an imposter. And he said, oh, you don't believe me. And with the snap of his fingers, everything turned black. Albert Einstein couldn't see his own hand. It was completely dark. And suddenly, there was this sphere that appeared like a spotlight. And Einstein was looking at this circle, at this sphere, and he started seeing the creation of the universe and the creation of the world and all the images in the universe, in the world. And he even saw me, as a documented coming across the border. He even saw me like that, and I went like this. He saw Moses and Santa Claus and baby Jesus and everything, all the images, all at the same time, simultaneously. And then the light was gone. And Iblis said, do you believe me now? And Einstein was speechless. Imagine Einstein not be able to think. And then he said, but I can go now. I have projects. I have theories. Humanity needs me. I can go now. We gotta go. No, wait. I need a year. Just give me a year. That's it. That's all I'm asking for, a year. People need me. You gotta give me a year. And Iblis said, very well, Albert. I'll give you a year. I'll see you right here in a year. Okay. So Albert Einstein went and he went back to his office and his laboratory, and he started working on his theories and his formulas and everything. And then he published his works and his theories, and he became the most famous man in the world, and he got the Nobel Prize for whatever it was, physics, mathematics. Yeah, he won that, and then he became the most famous man in the world. And then he announced his own death. He said, I'm going to die. And people thought he got gone crazy, So, oh, poor man, all these numbers and all this thinking, poor man, he went crazy. Oh, all right, whatever. They didn't believe him. So then, on that Christmas day, he went for his last walk. And he walked the same path. He got to the same bench. And he sat there. And he waited. And yes, Iblis came and said, Albert, I just came to say goodbye. So long. And he left. And Einstein was confused. He said, wait. What do you mean you have to go? I thought we were going together. But he didn't answer. And then Einstein said, Iblis. And when Iblis heard his name, he turned around. And Einstein said, at least you have to give me an explanation. What's going on? And Iblis said, you see, Albert, we noticed that you were getting a little lazy. So we decided to give you a little shh. And Einstein sat there. And he looked at his watch. And it was 2 minutes after 5. Thank you.
Oh, my.
Thank you very much, Manuel, for your gift to us, a very, very creative story. And I love the way you use your body. Man, I wish I gotta practice that. So our next person, poet, Don Feliz, as in Feliz Navidad. So we have all sorts of Christmas babies, Christmas carols, and now Feliz as well. Don served in the U.S. Army in Berlin when the Berlin Wall was built. And I don't know how many of you have ever been to Berlin, but you go to Checkpoint Charlie, and there's pictures of during some international crisis where the tanks are lined up on either side of Checkpoint Charlie, pointing at each other about 200 yards away. And that's how close we were to nuclear war back in the early sixties. It's just amazing to think that.
Wow.
And that's when Don was in Berlin. So Don is a poet and editor. He's been published in multiple publications, journals, and we're going to hear what he has to say today. His poems. Thank you.
Right, you all.
Howdy.
I'm just wondering about having to follow all these excellent people. We'll just do some poems here. Outstanding. Purple iris on longest stem shouts with golden tongue. Look at me. I'm the tallest purple blossom in the bouquet. Mailbox lasagna. It's been record-breaking hot for over a week. Of course, I wrote this 6 months ago. 110-degree days were common. My mailbox on a post heats in full sunlight all day, as hot as an oven inside. I proved it with layers of boiled pasta and pre-cooked sausage slices, various cheeses, spices, chopped onions, peppers, and parsley in a 5 by 10-inch loaf pan, wrapped in foil. I put it in my mailbox by 10 a.m. Friends and I enjoyed eating the whole lasagna at dinner.
Oh, boy.
Halloween stew. When moonlight moves across the yard, shadows brew at midnight. 3 shades in a ring, stir broth in a kettle, add awful things to their iron pot, and boil the stew steaming hot. No fire for them, they're up to date. Cook their spells on an induction plate. Shrinking stand.
Can you move the mic a little? We can't hear.
Yeah.
I was wondering.
Sure. Okay.
There we go.
Shrinking standards. I ordered my favorite cookies in a fancy box designed with price pack architecture. It looked special compared to packages I ordered last year for the same price. When I folded the empty box to recycle, I saw the weight of the cookies in price pack architecture was less than I remembered the cookies in the old box. Here we are at Berlin. Siege. A lifetime ago, 2 million citizens of a crushed community were cut off from food, medicine, clothing, fuel, and hope. Good people of the world responded with airplanes and pilots brought from every direction to create a 100-mile stream of relief. Survivors of the besieged people inspired the struggle and triumph of democracy over tyranny's wall and are a template for Gaza's future.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the airlift, which was 12 years before I got there, but I saw well, actually I flew into the airport that was used. I didn't fly, but I was a passenger. Annual leave, Cold War, 1961. 2 of us listened to demonstrator shouts a block away from our Paris sidewalk cafe. We had been touring foreign lands and knew nothing about the Cuban invasion until 3 young Frenchmen stepped from the sidewalk and one asked loudly, When are you Americans going to start World War III? We didn't know and returned to duty as probable martyrs in divided Berlin. Sheep asleep. Most of the sheep agreed the one with gilded fleece would lead them to glory. They may be surprised when his golden words turn out to be fake.
Wow.
Finish line. The race to civic success is long. Its finish line is out of sight. Winners string out in the first laps, test themselves, plan how to close gaps, pass contenders, reach the front for an explosive final sprint. No effort is spared, no relaxation is possible to reach the finish line before the other candidates. Tyrant's vintage. The top tyrant selects ignorant sycophants to mirror his broken programs. Shards of ideas bleed the masses with millions of tiny cuts. Squeeze wealth into vats of red wine for oligarchs. Homegrown labor, 1932. Great American memories live in shanty towns, patched together with found material scraps, cardboard boxes, remains of crates, tin cans, linoleum, and corrugated metal. Jobless workers and veterans built Hoovervilles in city parks. They disappeared when a torrent of federal programs employed millions to preserve and enhance public assets and defend the nation with arms made by war profiteers. Big pressure. The tyrant with bags of money advances greed and hate as keys to open our national gate. He has the keys, but it is such a jerk. He can't make them work without wait for the transfer date. His plan is clear. We have much to fear from the tyrant's tools, squad of fawning fools. Poet's pens answer the tyrant's threat. He has not succeeded yet. It's the last one. Spare arm. The poetry reading intermission included an extensive snack selection in the theater lobby. There were many sandwiches, salad, salami, crackers, sliced apples, olives, cookies, stuffed celery, and deviled eggs. The lobby had no tables, and I struggled to eat with my full plate and plastic drink glass. Others struggled too, except one whose third hand held his plate and his right hand a wine glass so he could eat from the plate with his left hand. I drank the drink, discarded my plastic glass, and ate the snacks with my only free hand. Thank you.
Appreciate your gift, Don, and some historical perspective as well as some humor. You did make me realize when you talked about you servicemen who were in Berlin being the martyrs, that is so obvious because Berlin is isolated East Germany is all around it. You guys were surrounded. The entire-
100 miles.
Yeah, surrounded. So had there been a war, you guys would have been gone. Wow.
Would have been
Yeah, I'd never thought about that before.
a couple of thousand against around 50,000
Yeah.
Russians.
So, thank you so much, Feliz Navidad. And our last teller is Walter Wilson. Walter, as he's mentioned, has mentioned more than once, is very, very proud that he is a true Californian, third generation. Family's been here since the 1880s. Walter is very active in Toastmasters, as is Karen Daly. And I don't know if you two heard the moth last week, but one of the tellers was from Detroit and he told about his Toastmaster successes.
No.
Uh, Walter storytelling covers all genres, and Walter requested the last slot on the program, so I'm curious to what his story has to offer. Walter Wilson.
Was the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even Eddie Spaghetti's mice. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas would soon be there. You children were all snug in your beds, while visions of Christmas goodies danced in your head. And Nancy in her kerchief and Andrew in his cap had just settled down for a long winter's nap. When out of the lawn there arose such a clatter, Andrew sprang from his bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window he flew like the flash. He tore open the shutters and, Andrew, you threw up the sash. The breast of the moon on a new fallen snow. And he called them by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Donner and Vixen. On Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blixen. To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, dash away all. As dried leaves before the wild hurricane fly, they meet an obstacle and mount to the sky. To the rooftops, as coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the pawing and prancing of each little hoof. I drew in my hand and was turning around, and down the chimney, St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed in fur from his head to his foot. His clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back. He looked like a peddler just opening his pack. Oh, how his eyes twinkled, his dimples how merry, his cheeks were like roses, and his nose like a cherry. The droll of his mouth was drawn on with woe, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. He was a jolly and right plump little old elf, and you all laughed when you saw him in spite of yourselves. With a twist of his eye and a nod of his head, soon gave us all we had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word and went straight to his work. He filled all the stockings and turned with a jerk, laying a finger aside of his nose, up the chimney he rose. He sprang to his sleigh, and to his team he gave a whistle, and they all flew away like the dawn thistle. But oh, my friends, we heard him exclaim as he drove out of sight, Merry Christmas to all, and to all, good night. I wanted to be last.
Thank you, Walter. That's the best version of that I've ever heard. And
Yes.
particularly well spoken because of your silver white hair, just like Santa. It's like Santa. Well, that wraps it up, folks. We have a few announcements, so don't start shuffling out of here yet. I'm gonna make a short announcement first. I am the host again in February. So if you would like to tell a story or a poem in February, let me know.
What's your thing?
The theme is Books National Library Month. Books/National Library Month. And then I'm going to let Joyce announce next month's program as well as some information about our upcoming festival.
First of all, congratulations on a great program. Next month, January, I'm the host. I have Looking Forward. And I have a full slate of tellers, and I can't wait to announce them. I also want to remind you a couple things. We have a Sacramento Valley Storytelling Festival coming up in March, and the ticket sales do not cover the cost. And so there's a basket over there, and if you've had a good time and you feel like it, please donate to the festival because we need all the money we can get. I'd also like to introduce to you 2 of our 3 new board members. Michelle Wood, I don't know there she is. Yay! Manuel Canenjo. Yay! And John Patterson, who couldn't be here today. They are joining our board and they wish you all well and Happy New Year, Merry Christmas. And now I would like Karen to give you a few announcements.
Stay here.
Oh,
I don't have any announcement. I don't know if you've known, but the last couple of years, our guild has done tremendous work. First, from an excellent president, Andrew Loffer, or Father Andy, Daddy, Papa Loffer, or from our outgoing president, Joyce Orman. I have some big shoes to try to fill. It's going to be very difficult. I'm going to need all your help. But I want to say, Joyce, thank you for all the work and energy that you have put in this last year. We couldn't do enough for you. Thank you. That's all.